something is broken. When full-time workers are skipping meals, parents are losing sleep over grocery bills, and families earning what used to be decent money now feel one emergency away from disaster that is not just stress. That is a warning sign. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about something millions of people are feeling, but not everyone wants to say out loud. Americans are not just struggling a little more than usual. Many are being squeezed so hard from every angle that it feels less like bad luck and more like a system that keeps pushing ordinary people closer to poverty. Rent keeps climbing like it is training for the Olympics. Groceries cost more, utilities cost more, insurance costs more, and somehow wages still act like they are living in a completely different decade. People are working, budgeting, out to cutting back, and still falling behind. That is what makes this story so disturbing. This is not only about unemployment or reckless spending. This is happening to people with jobs, degrees, side hustles, and carefully planned budgets. In this video, we are going to unpack why so many Americans feel financially trapped, what is driving this quiet collapse, and why the middle class is starting to look like a myth with a monthly payment plan. Stay with us until the end, because once you see how all these pieces fit together, the bigger picture becomes impossible to ignore. Before we continue, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notification. Americans are being forced into poverty. Sounds dramatic until you look around and realize the drama is already on the street, in the checkout line, in the rent portal, and in the quiet sigh people let out before opening another bill. The problem is not that millions of people suddenly forgot how to budget. The problem is that the math has turned hostile. Even with the official U.S. poverty rate falling to 10.6% in 2024, that still meant 35.9 million people in poverty, while the broader pressure on working households remained intense. Real median household income in 2024 was $83,730, basically unchanged from 2023 after inflation, which is a polite statistical way of saying a lot of people are running hard without really moving. That is why so many Americans feel like they are being pushed, not simply struggling. On paper, the headlines can sound almost reassuring. Poverty dipped a little. Real hourly earnings rose some. Inflation is no longer behaving like it drank 6 energy drinks before sunrise. But daily life does not happen on paper. Daily life happens when your paycheck arrives and vanishes like a magician doing a budget-themed performance. Rent reaches in first, utilities follow, groceries take their bite, insurance shows up wearing a tie and pretending it is reasonable. Then debt strolls in like it owns the place, which, to be fair, increasingly it does. The deepest frustration is that this squeeze is not only hitting people on the margins, it is hitting the people who were told they were safe, the full-time worker, the married couple with children, the parent with a side hustle, the person who switched from takeout to meal prep, from brand names to store brands, from weekend trips to scrolling through other people's vacations online like a spectator at a luxury zoo. America has created a strange economy where being responsible is still recommended, but increasingly not sufficient. Budgeting matters, yes. Financial discipline matters, yes. But when the cost of basic existence keeps rising faster than your sense of optimism, the issue is no longer just personal habits. It is structural pressure dressed up as individual failure. Take housing, the heavyweight champion of monthly stress. Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies reported that 22.7 million renter households, or 49% of all renters, were cost-burdened in 2024, meaning they spent more than 30% of income on housing. That was a record high for the 4th straight year. In its 2024 rental report, Harvard also found that half of all U.S. renters were cost-burdened in 2022, an all-time high then as well. Translation: housing is no longer merely expensive, it is now an organized financial ambush. A lot of households are not choosing between nice apartment and modest apartment. They are choosing between rent and breathing room, between staying housed and staying sane. And housing has a cruel sense of humor. It does not just consume income, it multiplies every other problem. When rent is too high, people save less. When they save less, emergencies hit harder. When emergencies hit harder, debt becomes the backup plan. Then debt payments reduce future flexibility, which makes next month even tighter. It is like stepping into wet concrete and being told to jog. Yes, some housing indicators improved in early 2026. The National Association of Realtors said its housing affordability index rose to 117.6 in February 2026, up from a year earlier, and the median existing home price that month was $398,000. So affordability improved relative to a brutal prior year, but improved is doing a lot of work there. For many families, home ownership still feels less like a plan and more like a museum exhibit labeled once common in North America. Then there is food, the category that makes economic theory personal very quickly. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that overall consumer prices rose 2.7% in 2025, while food prices rose 3.1%, including 2.4% for food at home and 4.1% for food away from home. In February 2026, food and food at home prices rose again month over month. These are not abstract increments when you are feeding children, caring for elderly parents, or just trying to make chicken last longer than basic arithmetic says it should. Americans have become amateur economists in the cereal aisle, staring at smaller boxes and bigger prices like they have been personally insulted by cardboard. The USDA reported that 13.7% of U.S. households, about 18.3 million, were food insecure at some point in 2024. That means millions of households did not have consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life for all members. In a rich country, that number should trigger national embarrassment. Instead, it often gets folded into the background noise, as if families cutting portions, skipping meals, or stretching groceries until the refrigerator becomes a minimalist art installation is just another lifestyle adjustment. It is not. It is a sign that many households are living with too little margin and too much volatility. Now add debt, because apparently the modern American survival kit includes a credit card and a prayer. The New York Fed reported that total household debt hit $18.8 trillion at the end of 2025, up $191 billion in the quarter, and up $4.6 trillion since the end of 2019. Mortgage balances reached $13.17 trillion, credit card balances hit $1.28 trillion, auto loans $1.67 trillion, and student loans $1.66 trillion. And those numbers are enormous enough to feel almost fictional, but the lived reality is very familiar. People are borrowing to stay afloat, then drowning more elegantly in monthly payments. And this is where the phrase forced into poverty begins to make uncomfortable sense. Poverty is not only about income sitting below an official line, it is also about fragility. It is about how easy it is to fall, how hard it is to recover, and how many people are one broken transmission, one rent increase, one emergency room bill, or one job cut away from serious trouble. The Federal Reserve's 2024 well-being data showed that 63% of adults said they could cover a hypothetical $400 emergency expense using cash or its equivalent. That sounds decent until you flip it around and realize 37% could not. More strikingly, only 48% said they could cover a $2,000 expense using savings. In other words, millions of people are not standing on solid ground. They are balanced on folding chairs. Healthcare makes the trap even meaner. KFF reported in January 2026 that about half of U.S. adults said they would not be able to pay an unexpected out-of-pocket medical bill of $500 without going into debt or otherwise struggling. KFF has also estimated that Americans owe at least $220 billion in medical debt, with about 14 million adults owing more than $1,000 and about 3 million owing more than $10,000. The CFPB has separately said $88 billion in outstanding medical bills were in collections, affecting 1 in 5 Americans. So yes, America has some of the most advanced medical technology on Earth. It also has a billing culture that can make a routine health scare feel like a financial mugging with paperwork. To make things even more absurd, people are often blamed for the very survival strategies the system pushes them into. Use credit to pay for groceries? Irresponsible. Fall behind after a rent hike? Poor planning. Delay care because the deductible is terrifying. Bad decision making. There is a certain national talent for handing people ankle weights and then critiquing their sprint speed. Personal responsibility matters, absolutely, but it cannot carry every conversation while structural costs keep climbing into the clouds and pretending the weather is normal. What makes this especially dangerous is the slow boil. Catastrophe is obvious. Slow financial erosion is sneakier. A family does not wake up one morning and announce, "Excellent, today we begin our descent into precarity." It happens in layers. Savings stop growing. Credit card balances stop getting paid in full. Small repairs get postponed. Healthy food gets swapped for cheaper filler. Insurance gets trimmed. Dental visits get delayed. Vacations disappear. Then joy starts getting cut from the budget too, which may not show up in government spreadsheets, but anyone who has lived through it knows it is real. Poverty is not always a cliff. Sometimes it is a staircase going down so gradually you do not notice until the light is worse, and the emotional toll matters. Constant financial pressure does something to people. It shortens patience, steals sleep, strains marriages, and turns ordinary errands into psychological events. Buying groceries becomes a strategy game. Opening email becomes a risk. The future starts to feel less like a horizon and more like a bill due on Tuesday. Even when the macro data improves slightly, the body remembers instability. Households that have been bruised by inflation, layoffs, higher borrowing costs, and recurring monthly shocks do not suddenly relax because one chart got less ugly. They remain cautious because caution is what happens when optimism has been mugged a few times. None of this means Americans are powerless, but it does mean the conversation has to be honest. Telling people to just budget better in an economy like this is like handing someone an umbrella in a hurricane and calling it infrastructure. Helpful, maybe. Sufficient, absolutely not. Real protection for households comes from a mix of personal tactics and broader policy conditions. On the personal side, the basics still matter. Knowing exactly where money goes, cutting high-interest debt as aggressively as possible, maintaining even a small emergency cushion, shopping insurance, resisting lifestyle inflation when income rises, and avoiding financial products that solve today's problem by detonating next month. Those habits will not fix the whole machine, but they can reduce how brutally it crushes you when it stutters. That part is worth saying clearly. Still, we should not pretend the burden belongs only to individuals. When nearly half of renters are cost-burdened, when household debt is at a record, when food insecurity affects 18.3 million households, and when millions cannot easily absorb a modest emergency, the issue is larger than bad choices by scattered individuals. It points to an economy where basic stability is becoming a premium feature, and that is the real scandal. So poverty in America is not only about the very bottom anymore, it is about the long, anxious stretch of households above the official poverty line who are technically functioning, socially presentable, and financially exhausted. So, yes, the official rate says poverty is not swallowing the entire country. That part matters, and accuracy matters. But lived experience also matters. Millions of Americans are not hallucinating the squeeze. They are living it. They see prices that do not retreat much, housing costs that dominate their budget, wages that help but do not liberate, healthcare bills that threaten to sabotage recovery, and debt that keeps turning emergencies into long-term obligations. They are not being forced into poverty by one villain in a black cape. They are being pushed by accumulation, by policy gaps, by cost structures, by weak household margin, and by an economy that keeps demanding more from ordinary people while giving them less room to breathe. And maybe that is the most honest way to put it. Poverty in modern America is increasingly less about a single dramatic collapse and more about an endless squeeze. A squeeze so persistent that even people with jobs, even people with plans, even people who followed the rules can feel themselves sliding toward instability. That is why this issue hits such a nerve. It is not only about economics, it is about dignity. It is about whether hard work still creates breathing room, whether the middle class is still a destination instead of a memory, and whether ordinary life should really feel this financially violent. Until those questions have better answers, a lot of Americans will keep feeling exactly what this title says, not merely struggling, but being forced closer and closer to poverty. We are down to the end, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching. What we talked about today is not just about money feeling tight, it is about how millions of Americans are working hard, making sacrifices, and still getting squeezed by rising housing costs, expensive food, growing debt, medical bills, and an economy that often feels like it rewards survival with another invoice. The real issue is not laziness or bad budgeting, it is that basic stability is becoming harder to hold on to, even for people doing their best to stay afloat. If this video opened your eyes, or if you are living this reality yourself, let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts, share your story, and tell us what part of this financial squeeze is hitting hardest where you live. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss more honest conversations about money, the economy, and what it really takes to survive and move forward today. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.